So because of the subject that I'm going to talk about today, I feel the need to remind any new viewer why I wear the yellow star and the yellow clothing of shame. It is because of what the Christians in Europe had done to the Jews and to the followers of Yehoshua. From Constantine until 1945 and onward and even further back. They pillaged, raped, and murdered the Jews in the name of a false god named Jesus Christos. And I have spoken often how the name Jesus Christos is a replacement person and a replacement name for Yehoshua Messiah, and it's due to anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. It's for that very reason. And so, the subject that I want to talk about today is concerning all the chaos and finger-pointing. Now the word treason is being thrown around left and right. This is not only in the United States. I live in the United States, of course, and what happened, I believe it was last night, I'll get into that in a few minutes, is much like what's happening in Europe. We're all pointing the finger at each other, calling each other traitors, making wild accusations. I thought all you folks were Christian nations. You claim to have this, Christian lifestyle that's supposed to be above board and everything like that. Well, with the nearly 2,000 years worth of evidence to the contrary, we know the truth. So I'm first going to start off with a Newsweek article that goes all the way back to January 12, 2018. This is by Christina Mazza. And of course, I understand Newsweek is a liberal left-wing magazine. Just be patient. I'm going to get to my point in a few minutes here. So, the title is Trump Will Start the End of the World, Claim Evangelicals Who Support Him. Evangelical Christians overwhelmingly support President Donald Trump because they believe he'll cause the world to end. Well, that's the first falsehood. One man cannot cause the world to end. You see, it is written that the end of the world comes at the appointed time, as I have very often pointed out in the scripture. See, oh yes, I set time. Here we go. It's Psalm 102, verse 13. You shall arise and have mercy upon Zion, for it is time for, for the time to favor her. Yes, the set time will come. The set time, the appointed time. And as I have pointed out, the rise of Zion, and you can look it up, in Isaiah 60. Isaiah 60 proves this point. The rise of Zion, the rise of Jerusalem, is the fall of this world. Okay? And I will continue reading this Newsweek article. Many have questioned why devout evangelicals support Trump, a man who has bragged about his... No, actually, he didn't brag about a sexual assault. This particular Newsweek article is flawed, but I'm not going to go into that right now. Lies perpetually, and once admitted he never asked God for forgiveness. Trump's lack of knowledge of the Bible is also well known. Nevertheless, many evangelical Christians believe that Trump was chosen by God to usher in a new era, a part of history called the end times. I could do another whole video about the end times. The end times began, as they say, with the killing of Yehoshua Messiah. But anyway, I won't go into that right now. Beliefs about this time period differ, but it is broadly considered the end of the world, a time when Jesus, as it should be Yehoshua, returns to earth and judges all people. Jerusalem has a central role as the city of prophecy and the place where the end of times play out. According to the prophecy, a 1,000-year period of peace must be followed by 7 years of tribulation. No, it is not. See, this particular narrative is passed around by the evangelicals by deliberately misreading Daniel 9, as I have pointed out over and over and over again, about the 62 sevens from the call to rebuild Jerusalem the first time until Messiah was cut off. And a call to rebuild Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince, which is his second coming, would be 7 sevens, or 49 years. There were 2 calls to rebuild Jerusalem, not 1, but 2. The 1 week, or the 1/7, occurred in the days of Titus the Roman general when he sacked Jerusalem. He was given 7 years to take Jerusalem, and he did it in 3.5. He did it in half the time. But the 7 years are over. They're done, finished, kaput. As I pointed out, and I learned this just by chance, from the second call to rebuild Jerusalem came from Shlomo Goren, general of the IDF in 1967. And from that point, you count 7 sevens, which is 49. And then you come to, let's see, yes, you come to 2016, the summer of 2016. Okay, then why didn't anything happen in 2016? I looked it up, tried to find out what was going on, and the Jews said there has to be a Jubilee first, and it made perfect sense. 50th year. Well, the 50th year came and went, which was the summer, ended in the summer of 2017. And then what have we here? Well, what people don't realize is back in 2015, a dark horse came up. That's right, in 2015, a dark horse came up in American politics. And he was not supposed to be elected president of the United States. And he has basically turned the world upside down. Now, I just said one man can't cause the end of the world. That's absolutely true. You see, the time is appointed. It is our Father in heaven who appoints leaders and brings them down, is it not? Let me see if I can find scripture that points us out. All right, it's Daniel 2, verse 21. This was when, this was a Nebuchadnezzar's dream. And so Daniel had to set up, in order to explain how he was able to understand Nebuchadnezzar's vision, he had to explain where it came from and who it was. In other words, he had to set up the set it up so the king could understand. Verse 19, and there was the secret revealed to Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed Jehovah, the Elohim of heaven. Verse 20, Daniel answered and said, Blessed be the name of Elohim forever and ever. For wisdom and might are his. He changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings and sets up other kings. And he gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to him that know understanding. And he reveals the deep and secret things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. All right, so now we know what happened with this Trump situation. So what is the reason why, Henry, do you think that Jehovah, our Father in heaven, planted the dark horse in American politics to turn the world upside down, figuratively speaking? Well, let me go to Haggai 2. Verse 18, consider now from this day and onward, from the 24th day of the 9th month. What day is that? That day is the first day of Hanukkah. That is the day where the foundation of Jehovah's temple began to be laid. Now consider it, he says. Is the seed yet in the barn? Yes, as yet the vine and the fig tree and the pomegranate and the olive tree have not brought forth. But this day, that day, will I bless you. Remember reading Psalm 102 and what was that verse? Where it says on a set time, on the appointed time, is he going to bless Zion. So what is that set time? What is that appointed time? It's on the 24th day of the 9th month on the Hebrew calendar. What year? I don't know. But I do know the day. Let's continue. Verse 20, and again the word of Jehovah came to Haggai in the 24th day of said month, which is the 9th month, saying, speak to Zerubbabel, governor of Yehuda, saying, I will shake the heavens and the earth, and I will overthrow the throne of kingdoms, and I will destroy the strength of the kingdoms of the nations, and I will overthrow the chariots, and those that ride in them, and the horses and the riders shall come down, every one by the sword of his what? His brother. Why is this going to happen? How is it going to happen? What caused it? We'll go to Daniel. I've done this so many times before. I'll keep doing it. Daniel 2, verse 45. We'll start in verse 40. In the fourth kingdom. Yes, the fourth kingdom began the Iron Age. Europe, Roman Europe. Shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaks in pieces and subdues all things, and as iron breaks all these, it shall break in pieces and bruise. And they most certainly did for a long, long time. And whereas you saw the feet and the toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. This sounds like set it one against another. Why? But there shall be in it the strength of the iron, for as much as you saw the iron mixed with miry clay, and as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken, and whereas you saw the iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. Yes, multiculturalism. Multiculturalism. But they shall not cleave to one another, even as iron is not mixed with miry clay. And in the days of these kings, and the implication is the days of these kings, when during the time when they are not cleaving to one another, they are pointing fingers at one another. And it happened because of the doctrine of multiculturalism. This is why Europe, right now, you can go and look on the UK Express, and you'll see that Europe is horribly fragmented. And now, the United States is horribly fragmented. But you will say, well, hold on, Henry. United States is not Europe. I mean, it's not the 10 kings of Europe. Well, that's true. It's not the 10 kings of Europe, because I've mentioned who the 10 kingdoms of Europe was. But however, the government is set up in a Roman fashion. For instance, the U.S. Senate, where did that come from? It came from the Roman Senate. What is it with all these phrases like e pluribus unum? Where did that come from? Well, that's Roman. A Romanish Greek. Make sure that I get my facts straight here. Yes, it's Latin, it's Roman. It means out of many one. It's Roman. The government of the United States is Romanish. And so, is it any wonder that what happens in Daniel 2 in verse 45 or 44, 42, 43, that's right, in 44, mainly 43, is happening in the United States today? But it wasn't really Donald Trump who turned the world upside down. What he did was he represented a group of people who did not like this particular mingling themselves with the seed of men, this multiculturalism, this Babylonish mixing of the races in the particular countries of Europe and in the United States. So it's no wonder that what's happening in Europe right now is happening in the United States, which brings me to what happened, what was it, last night, I believe it was. So, the New York Times, and anytime, my goodness, folks, anytime you get a report from the New York Times, it should be automatically suspect. It's one of the worst publications in the United States. And yet, we have the Trump administration and others falling or taking the bait, hook, line, and sinker from the New York Times op-ed. So in the New York Times, yesterday, the headline is, "I am a part of the resistance inside the Trump administration. I work for the president, but like-minded colleagues and I have vowed to thwart parts of his agenda and his worst inclinations." And you can see the spiel. You can look it up and read it for yourself. But apparently, what was it? The Huffington Post found a word in this article, a word that one member of the Trump administration uses quite often. The word is lodestar, Lodestar, and this was part of the portion of this article was concerning Senator John McCain. It says, "We may no longer have Senator McCain, but we will always have his example, a lodestar for restoring honor to public life and our national dialogue. Mr. Trump may fear such honorable men, but we should revere them." Well, I completely disagree with whoever wrote this article. I revere no man. Reverence belongs to our Father in heaven. And I also disagree with this article that John McCain was an honorable man. He was not an honorable man, and the Keating 5 situation proves that. It bears that out. But I don't want to get into politics today. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to point out what's happening and how the Trump administration and Republicans, conservatives seem to have fallen for this bait. I'm kind of, it kind of blows me away. And here's what I'm going to do. I've got to get rid of some of these. I have to get rid of this Washington Post article about Mike Pence being a evangelical Catholic. I'll talk about that in a minute too. But I need to get rid of this article because I got too much garbage on here. Okay, so the Huffington Post. The very next day, we're not even talking about 24 hours later. How did they come up with this so quick? It makes me suspicious. Okay, so their article says, one word has people convinced Mike Pence, wrote the anonymous New York Times op-ed. The identified member in the in-house resistance uses lodestar, an unusual word the vice president likes to say. The New York Times scathing anti-Donald Trump op-ed, which the paper attributed to a senior official in the Trump administration, has inspired a parlor game among people trying to figure out the author's name. Some online commentators are leaning toward Vice President Mike Pence based upon one word in the piece. The unidentified author singles out the late Arizona Senator John McCain as a lodestar for restoring honor to public life and to our national dialogue. The word, which Merriam-Webster defines as either a star that leads or guides or a person who serves as an inspiration model or a guide, isn't that commonly used. But Pence apparently says it a lot, according to this mashup posted on Twitter. And then, of course, they go down into the many, many times that Vice President Pence uses the word lodestar. Now, somebody like me, I could be very wrong. I don't, but I will tell you this. I am not a very bright individual. But how quickly, less than 24 hours after the New York Times op-ed, here comes the Huffington Post with an answer. It looks like a tag team by the New York Times and the Huffington Post against Donald Trump. That's what it looks like. It looks like a made-up story. Anybody could go and look up the writings of Vice President Mike Pence and use his vernacular to do what the New York Times just did. This is what I'm saying is, it didn't take me, just a few minutes to figure it out, that this is probably made up. Yet. Let's go to, where is this? It's not on Fox News, it's on, hope I didn't get rid of it. It was the remarks coming from, wow. Maybe it's this one. My computer's freezing up now. Come on. Well, I hope I don't have to stop this, but this is computer's just suddenly moving extremely slow. I don't know if I can find the article anymore now or not, because what it had was people on Twitter talking about lining the traitor up on the firing squad, a bunch of them, without thinking this whole thing through. Now, as I mentioned, Mike Pence is a evangelical. And I've had a big problem with evangelicals for a long time. And just for the record, I am not one of those up there accusing Vice President Mike Pence of coming up with this New York Times letter. When the New York Times came up with this letter, I was immediately suspicious that it was made up. But that they composed the letter in order to divide President Trump from Mike Pence, to turn the Republican Party against each other. Okay? So, concerning the evangelicals, once again, they claim, let's see how. All right, so going back to the Newsweek article where it says Jerusalem has a central role as a city of prophecy and the place where the end of times play out. According to the prophecy, a 1,000-year period, I've gone over that. 1,000-year peace must be followed by 7 years of tribulation, which wars, disease, and natural disasters will lay waste on the earth. I don't quite think it's, but they think that 7 years is listed in Daniel 7 and 20, Daniel 9 and verse 27, but it's not. You see, that 7 years already took place. It's long ago. It's done. The tribulation that's coming is a tribulation on the Gentiles in retaliation for what happened in Revelation 9:27. Because it says that the desolations would continue upon Jerusalem until the time when desolations will overtake the desolator. That's what it says. Go read it. And they're claiming that Jerusalem's Jewish temple would be resurrected during this period. That's not true. When you read Revelation, when the New Jerusalem comes down, John said, and I quote, "I saw no temple there, because Jehovah and the Lamb, they are the temple." But of course, you see, I never accuse evangelicals of reading the Bible, reading prophecy, or even reading the apostles. So I'll continue with Newsweek article. The last temple was destroyed around 70 AD. And today there is a mosque on the Temple Mount where the previous two temples are believed to have stood. Evangelicals believe that a unified Israel with control over Jerusalem will facilitate the construction of a new Jewish temple and set the groundwork for the end times. That's where Trump comes in. What kickstarts the end times in the motion is Israel's political boundaries being reestablished to what Jehovah, or as they say, God, promised the Israelites according to the Bible. Nate Pyle, a pastor and author of a book about, they're saying Jesus, told Newsweek. On December 6th, Trump officially recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, a controversial move that was lambasted by U.S. allies around the world. The eastern part of Jerusalem has long been envisioned as a future capital of a Palestinian state if and when a two-state solution is reached between Israel and the Palestinians. By recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, many critics said Trump killed any chance of a negotiated peace deal in the Middle East. But evangelical Christians threw the full weight behind the decision. Currently, over half of all American evangelicals support Trump's presidency, and the announcement about Jerusalem plays a big role in that. Most evangelicals subscribe to a belief in premillennialism, the belief that the second coming of, as they say, Christos, will begin a 1,000-year period where this Christos will rule over a peaceful and prosperous earth. Neil J. Young, a religion historian, told Newsweek, Young, who holds a PhD in history from Columbia University, writes frequently on evangelical culture and politics. Israel is a key part of this story, too, as Christians believe that events there are fundamental to bringing about the end times. Young continued, at this point, Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel is the only concrete thing that his evangelical supporters can point to as part of fulfilling biblical prophecy to bring about the second coming. Meanwhile, the evangelical belief in the end times also includes the eventual conversion to Christianity of the Jewish people. Well, I have got news for you Christians. The Jews will never convert to Christianity, because the Messiah's name is not Jesus Christos. The Messiah's name is Yehoshua, Messiah, or Moshiach. That's his name. When the Jews see him, they will recognize him. They will be happy, and the rest of the world is going to be angry. That includes you evangelicals. I will continue. The scenario begins when Christos comes to earth to take the living Christians who believe in him to heaven. There is absolutely no basis for this. To Jehovah's abode? No. Yehoshua said, "Where I go, you cannot come." No, you're not going to heaven. Let me show you. And I hope this computer keeps working for me. What is it? John 8, verse 22. And it's also in 8, verse 21. We'll start in 8, verse 21. I've tried to explain this to my Christian evangelical friends, and they just cannot get this concept out of their minds. Now, it also mentions in another particular chapter, and I will go to that too, when Yehoshua again said unto them, "I go my way, and you will seek me, and die in your sins. Where I go, you cannot come." Then said the Jews, "Will he kill himself? Because he says, where I go, you cannot come." And he said unto them, "You are from beneath, which is the earth, and I am from above. You are of this world, and I am not of this world. For this reason I say unto you, that you will die in your sins, and you believe not that I am he shall die in your sins." Okay, so there's another one. Okay. I know Christians would say, oh, he was only talking to the Jews. He wasn't talking to the Christians. John 3:36. Simon Peter said unto him, Master, where are you going to go? Let me get this in full context here. We got 13:36, okay. This is where verse 34, he says, a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, even as I have loved you, that also you love one another. By this men shall all know you are my disciples, if you want to love one another. Simon Peter said unto him, Master, where are you going? Yehoshua said, where I go, you cannot follow me now, but you shall follow me afterwards. What does that mean? Well, Yehoshua did come back to earth after he was raised from the dead to get Peter and the apostles out of their fishing boats and do the work that he commanded them to do. Matthew 26:31. Let's see. That's Peter's denial, which was a part of the Anyway, he told them, where I go, you cannot come. Heaven is not the abode of men. Okay? And if these Christians think they're going to go to heaven, how are they going to go to heaven when at the sixth seal, the people see the one who sits on the throne, our Father in heaven, and the Lamb coming down to earth? They see him. Go read it. And if that is so, then how in the world are the Christians going to go up to heaven in Jehovah's abode, when Jehovah's abode is going to be on earth? Now, this is where this gets interesting with these evangelicals. And resurrect the dead who are true Christians. Event called the rapture. Afterwards, it is believed that the Antichrist will reign on earth during the 7-year period of tribulation. Well, I submit to you that the 7-year period that Daniel 9 and verse 27 was talking about Titus, the Roman general who later became Caesar, and the opposer of Jerusalem is the one who sits on Caesar's seat in Rome at the Vatican. But see, the evangelicals, by claiming that person is yet to show up, has denied that he ever showed up, that he ever was around previously. In this period, many Jews will recognize the Antichrist is a false god and will turn to, as they say, Jesus at the end of the 7 years. It says there Christos will return with an army of angels and defeat the Antichrist. Well, here's the deal. When you take a false narrative like this and try to make it come to pass, you are inviting trouble. Big, big, big trouble. The truth is, as is written here, Israel will indeed get all its land. But it won't get all its land until the Messiah, Yehoshua Messiah, comes. The one that the Christians believe is the Antichrist. The Christians, the evangelicals, they think that the so-called Antichrist has to sit in Zion, in a temple that is going to be yet built. The opposer sits among the Romans. Paul, every time Paul mentioned the temple, or nearly every time Paul mentioned the temple, he was talking about the church. And what church was Paul over? The Gentiles. So when he said in Thessalonians that this man is going to sit in the temple, he was talking about the church. And he's going to call himself God by calling himself the Father. It's already happened. And it happens, it is still happening. So, what is false about the evangelical narrative? The main thing that is false about it is their belief that, as they say, the Antichrist is going to sit in the temple in Jerusalem. Well, they may call him their Antichrist. But that one who's going to sit on a throne in Jerusalem, that is Israel's true Messiah. And so, because of the beliefs in lies, it is the evangelicals, among many other Christians, who are going to believe that Israel's Messiah is their enemy. And so it's no wonder this insanity is going on in the United States, just like it's happening in Europe. As I have said before, this civil unrest that's going to take place in the United States is not my war. I will not participate. I will not participate in word, and I will not participate in arms. Just like I will not participate in any civil unrest in Europe that's coming. It should be obvious to everyone that civil unrest is coming. And I sure wish that I hadn't deleted that particular article where maybe it was on Daily Caller, I don't know, but I'm not able to do much with my computer right now. It's just as slow as molasses. But the insanity coming from the blogs talking about lining the traitor up on the firing squad. They're gonna bring down judgment even before they find out whether the story is true or not. And I don't believe it. I don't believe that the story is true. Yeah, so Fox News article says Trump fumes over New York Times op-ed top officials swiftly deny role. And let's see if it's on the Fox News blog. Nope, it's not there. I lost it. But you know as well as I do, you've looked up the blogs yourself and you've seen these people talking about lining up traitors at a firing squad. That sounds so Christian, doesn't it? Really, folks? This is why I wear this and not your cross. I'm not a partaker in that insanity, and I'm not going to be. But those of you who think like I do, prepare yourselves. It's going to be ugly. And before I forget, when I talked about how 2015 Donald Trump announced his candidacy for President of the United States, he wasn't supposed to be elected. And yet he was elected. And he was elected by the people to turn to basically turn the government upside down. They say the deep state, to drain the swamp, so to speak. Well, once again, I say, and not me that says this, but it says it in Daniel 2, where it talks about, where Daniel said, Jehovah is the one who sets up rulers and brings them down. Well, I believe that Donald Trump was placed there for a reason. But it might not necessarily the reason why you and I have expected or suspected. In order to get the ball rolling, tumult has to be taking place in Europe and in the Romanish governments of this world. As we read in Daniel 2, verses 41, 42, and 43. And once again, Haggai 2, verses 18 through 22, gives the end result. Massive chaos and civil unrest. What day are we looking for? 24th day of the 9th month on the Hebrew calendar. Better mark it every year. Because it could be this one.